right, so tonight is all about hatred and regret, and discord. And then the next session is on forgiveness. As I prepared, when I first started working on this series, I thought, yeah, this is a no-brainer. There's so much on this topic. There is so much written about the nature of hatred and the nature of discord and the nature of regret in context of forgiveness and all sorts of things, that when I told Irina, I think this is a worthwhile topic if you want to slot it in for some time during the year, she was like, oh, that's excellent. People will love that. As I got closer to tonight, I realized you're going to walk off hating me and not forgiving me. But regret was last series, so you now have no regret. You just do it open-mindedly. So we've got tonight where we're going to talk about hatred and discord. Next week is Shavuot, and if you would like to do something really cool on Shavuot, you can join us on Saturday night. We've got two programs. We've got one which is on the boat people, on the refugee crisis, and we'll be exploring whether the Jewish angle is to be compassionate and worry less about nationalism and security and these things, or whether the Jewish approach should be, no, security comes ahead of everything, even women and children. And we have different people presenting from different angles. And the reason why we're doing that is because Shavuot is the time that the Torah was given. And we're trying to help people connect with interesting ideas in the Torah on the anniversary. So that's one interesting topic. And the other interesting topic, which is a little later, will be a discussion on how the Mount Sinai incident 3,300 odd years ago impacted our reincarnation. So that's then. And so I'm just mentioning that because there's no class next week, and instead, if you want a class, come on Saturday night. It's guaranteed to be an absolute party. And then the week after, we're back on. We've got forgiveness. So let me talk about hatred. Before I talk about hatred, let me tell you that hatred is a very bad word. It's one of those words like anger. It means absolutely nothing as you start tearing it apart. What's hatred? Hatred is a strong feeling. Well, what sort of strong feeling is hatred? And once again, we're going around getting ourselves confused. In fact, hatred, I discovered, is one of those words that if you keep writing it out or typing it out, you look at it and you go, that can't be how you spell it. You know those words that you just mess with your brain? Well, hatred is one of them. I'm going to give you the conclusion of the series right now, and then we're going to pull it apart over the next two sessions. Number one, hatred is never allowed in regards to another person. You like that little caveat. You can hate, just not another person. Number two, forgiveness is not obligatory. Judaism seems to be the only religion that I could find. It's possible it exists in other religions, but definitely not the big ones. Forgiveness is something that is not obligatory. No one has to forgive. And in fact, forgiveness may be a stupid idea anyway. It may not be in the power of anyone to actually forgive. And I'll leave you with this, and then we're going to get back to hatred. There's a story with Simon Wiesenthal, and it's in a book called, I think, The Sunflower. Yeah, the famous story. Simon Wiesenthal was a Nazi hunter. He was a survivor of the war. He was an Austrian Jew. And during the war, he was asked by a Nazi whether he could have a word with him. This Nazi was very mortally wounded and was about to die. And Simon was brought in front of him in the hospital, and the man said, I've done many terrible things. And if you read the book, you can actually get the list. I'm not interested in repeating it. And I'm asking you, as a representative of the Jews, to forgive me for what I've done. And Simon looked at him and turned around and walked away. And he didn't forgive him, and the man died. And much, much later in life, Simon organized a symposium with many religious leaders and ethical thought leaders and philosophers to weigh in on this discussion. Should he or should he not have forgiven the Nazi? And as he writes in the book, interestingly, all the other religious leaders said, of course he should have forgiven the Nazi. When a person is so sincere in that moment, the only people that said definitely not were the rabbis. And so once again, people say, oh, how predictable. The rabbis will take the Jewish version and everyone else is more objective. And others will say, no, everyone else lives in La La Land, and the rabbis were the only ones that could actually empathize with him. We're not going to discuss whether or not he should or should not have forgiven. What I will just leave you with, so you know what to come to the next program with, was the question, does Simon have the power to forgive? Was it done to him that he can forgive? Can he forgive this man's acts that he did to so many other men, women, and children? And that's the real question. Does he even have the power to forgive? And then as we go next week in 2 weeks into the Kabbalah of it, and the spiritual psychology of it, is the forgiveness really just a conscience thing? Like, I can live with myself if a Jew says, hey, yeah, he forgives me. Or is forgiveness something real? So let's talk about hatred first. Hatred is very, very interesting. There are two forms of hatred. I read another cute story. I don't know whether it's true or not, but it brings out the point. Of course, unfortunately, I don't normally bring analogies from the Holocaust. I don't bring stories from that into the classes usually, because they're very emotional and they take people into a place that makes it hard to concentrate on what we're talking about. But this is a story that took place in a DP camp. I've heard names associated with the story, but I don't know if they were there, so I'm not going to say that they were there just to give myself credibility. The point is all I care about. Two Jews, they're in a DP camp. Sounds like a joke already, but it's not. They're in a DP camp, and it's 1945. And one of them asked the other for a loan of 5 Reichmarks, which was the currency at the time straight after the war. And he had the money. And so he lends him the 5 Reichmarks, and he says, can you please, or however much, he says, can you please ensure to repay me by the end of the month? And the man says, yeah, sure, that I can do. 4 weeks, because I've got a package coming from America, and there's money, I'll be able to repay you, no worries. So the end of the month, the lender comes to the borrower and says, can you pay me back? And the man says, look, I can't pay you back right now. And he starts giving him an excuse that the package got delayed. I will pay you back in 2 weeks. 2 weeks later, he comes back and says, can I be paid back? He says, look, I actually can't pay you back because what I thought was going to happen didn't happen, but I'll pay you back next week. Next week, the guy comes, he says, look, I know I told you I'd pay you back, but I need you to wait 1 more week before I can pay you back. And this goes on for months, 6, 8, 9 months. One day, the borrower comes to the lender, and this is like a weekly occurrence. The borrower says, Rabbi, my friend, here are 5 Reichmarks that you lent me. I'm going to America, and I wanted to be able to pay you back before I went. And the lender said, you know what? Keep your 5 Reichmarks. I much prefer to think of you the way I do now than to have to accept you. Much rather what's he saying? I much rather the hatred and the animosity that I've built up. Now you're paying me back. I've got no reason to hate you anymore. So I'd rather be in that state. And I think that's something that, the reason why I brought that story is because I don't care whether it's true or not, because it's definitely a true story. We all love a good dose of hate. At least a lot of us do. I know who the haters are. I see them. They're smiling. Hate is something that takes place. The thing is, there are 2 types of hate. There's hate which is connected to something that was done. And then there is hate for hate's sake. If I had to break up this story, there are two moments of hatred, if I could be so bold and extreme. And if it's not hatred, allow it to be hatred for the sake of the metaphor. In the beginning, 2-3 months into the story, the man owed the other one money. And this is immediately after the war. Money is of value. They're in a DP camp. It's money. It's unfair that he's not paying him back. And every week he's got another excuse, another this, another that. And he can see this guy's got packages coming and has got this and has got that happening. All he wants is his money back and is not getting it back. And you can imagine that leads to a sense of discord, a state of discord. And eventually that does manifest in hatred. But it's linked to something. You can't blame him. But then, at the end of the period of the story, the man offers to pay him back. And if he pays him back, what do we find out from this story? That he's going to continue hating him. Why? Because I don't like you. In fact, I hate you. So there is no justification for the hate. It is a new condition. What is hate? What is hate? So I'm going to do something a little different this series. I would like to draw on a story in the Torah, explain the history of the story, and then look at the spiritual symbolism of the story. And the reason is because the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, have 4 methods of interpretation. Pshat, which is what is the story telling me. Remez, what is being said between the lines in the stories. Drush, what is the additional information that is not apparent but able to be learnt out that tells me so much more about the situation or an aspect of life? And then Sod, which is what is the spiritual reading into this story or set of laws? If you take, for example, Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, Avraham, Yitzchak and Yaakov, what do you think of? Old men, big beards. One of them had a circumcision when he was 99 years old. One of them almost got killed when he was 36 years old. One of them had a son who got sold as a slave. Famous characters. People that live tough lives. All that stuff. And yet, when we talk about Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, we talk about Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, 3 of the primary Sfirot. That Avram is Chesed, which is kindness. Yitzchak is Gvura, which is strength and severity, and Yaakov is Tiferes, which is balance and inner beauty. So these are not people, they are concepts. Avram was an outgoing individual. He greeted everyone, B'Sev upon him Yofis, always with an open heart and a big smile. Yitzchak was a very tough individual. He was a very judgmental individual. He never left Israel. He didn't travel. He had no aspiration to get out there. He was very inward. He was very, not inward, that's a negative word. He was very, he definitely comes across as an introvert, and he is a very, very tough person, and he endures a lot. So he is Gvura. He's not a person, he is a concept. And then Yaakov has 12 kids. They all end up believing in his value system. They all believe in his beliefs. He has a warm relationship with each one of them. He manages to create balance and harmony in the home, even though that only took place in the last 22 years of his life. So it's not about Jacob, some bloke that lived thousands of years ago. The story of the Torah, obviously, is to tell us about this idea of harmony and balance, or this idea of chesed, or this idea of gvura. And a lot of people think that the whole Torah is one big allegorical mess of stories that are there to teach us spiritual things. And that's just not true. Because Pshat says that the stories in the Torah are what is said, is what is written is what happened. So yes, I am saying that there was a man named Avraham, and he had a wife Sarah, and there was a bad king called Avimelech, and there were Jews that were enslaved, there were Hebrews that were enslaved in Egypt, and there was a man named Pharaoh, and there were 10 plagues, and as crazy as it is to believe, you know what? Man flew to the moon, and that was pretty crazy as well at one point to think about. It's not about whether or not we can get our head around it. It's just accepting pshat. What the story is what happened. But on a sod level, on the Kabbalistic level, everything that we are told that happened in the Torah is not just about an old man named Abraham and an old man named Isaac, but it's actually about a concept called chesed and a concept of gvura. And you bring the two together and you end up with tiferet. And it's a whole story about sfirot, about energies, about personality traits informed by the soul. This past week, this past parsha, B'chukotai, the Arizal learns a whole journey, a whole message of reincarnation from the parsha. The whole beginning is all about reincarnation. There is no word Gilgul in there, but if you look at the words and you look at what they're saying, you actually realize once you've learnt the Arizal that it is talking about reincarnation. People thought it was talking about laws and rain and all that. It wasn't. It's talking about the souls that are reincarnated into food types of animals or plants, or it's about souls that are reincarnated into stones. It's got nothing to do with people. It's got everything to do with souls. So however you want, there are different ways to learn it. But who's to say it can't be both? It can be both. The question is whether the characters in the Torah knew what they represented. What we know is that there was a man, Moses. Moses has a soul which comes from the level of Atzilut. Atzilut is, there are four worlds, right? Atzilut, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya. When we say worlds, we don't mean out there. There are four different dimensions of reality that exist in the lower regions of existence. These four states of reality exist right here. If you can feel the table, if you can sense, if you can feel a sense of self, if you have feelings and you are thinking and you can hear me speaking hello right now, trust me, you're in the world of Asiya right now. You're in the world of physicality. That's not to say you're not also in the realm of Yetzirah. Yetzirah is the world of formation. Asiya is the action, it's the doing, it's the physicality. Let's actually now jump back to the top. Atzilut means the emanation, the shining. It is a reference to the emanation of energy. It is not a physical energy, at least not as we understand physical. It is something that it exists, so it is physical in that sense. But it is an energy. It is an energy that is completely rooted within its source. So imagine sunlight the way it is inside the sun. That is Atzilut. Why is it called shining? Because it's able to reveal itself. It's able to shine. Atzilut is the shining not because it has detached itself. It's not like a sunlight, a wave of light or a particle of light or wave particle of light is detached from the sun. It has come from, but it is no longer. Although if you look at a sun ray, not under the microscope, not through any means of measurement, but just to the naked eye, to the simple mind of the child, the sun ray is connected to the sun, but the sun ray is not the sun. It's an extension of the sun. It is a product of the sun. Atzilut is like light inside the sun, but the fact that it exists as light means it is able to be detected should it reveal itself. Bria is creation. It's the creation that comes from Atzilut. The energy of Atzilut manifests in creation. But creation is not an object. It is potential. But potential means there is something with what to have potential with. So it is the energy being mitzamtzem, the energy being brought down into a state that it could now be formed. But it is not formed. It just exists in a state. That is Bria. The next state is Yetzirah, which means formation. The energy, which is now emanated from Atzilut and exists in its own right, can now be formed, and therefore it is the realm of formation. And then formation has finality. It's not an abstract form, it is a final form, which is the realm of physicality. The entire physical universe, as we know it, as we don't know it, exists as the physical existence of Yetzirah, which is a formed existence of Bria, which is a manifestation of a series of changes in energy from Atzilut, which is the lowest point, which is still a part of where the infinite is still one within itself. I don't think I need to go any further into that for tonight. I just need you to realize that there are multiple dimensions. Where do angels exist? Angels are forms. There's no such thing as angels. At least not ones with floppy hands and a grey cardigan. But angels have wings, but they don't have wings of chicken feathers or turkey feathers or anything. And they have light, but they don't have halos. These are Christian images or images that belong to other religions. We don't have such concepts. Yes, we have a concept of an angel, and yes, there are angels with 4 wings and 6 wings and 8 wings and multiple wings. But when we talk about wings, we're not talking about bird wings. We're talking about a spiritual concept called a wing. When we talk about that they don't have legs, but they can stand, we're not talking about feet like you and I. We're talking about concepts here, which we have to use analogies and metaphors in order to build a relationship with it. So they don't have raglayim, but they have the ability for amida, for standing. Angels exist in the realm of Yetzirah. So, of course, if an angel exists in Yetzirah, it is a lower angel. It is a very defined angel, although far less defined than a human being is, because we exist in Asiya. And you can have angels that exist in Bria. And Bria is a place of where there is existence but not formation. So they exist, but they don't have formation. What's the problem with formation? Formation is a form of limitation. Just think about it. When you build a sandcastle, it's got a form. Yeah, and that form is not anything else. Look at yourselves in the mirror. You've got a form. And that form defines who you are. And by definition, you are not anything else. If you're 5'7", you are not 5'8". If you're a male, you are not a female. If I'm talking about just anatomically, I'm not getting into I hope I didn't offend anyone. If you are old, you are not young. If you're a stone, you are not a tree. You've got definition, and the result of your definition is your limitation. That limitation exists in Asiya, but it actually also exists, but far less. But it still exists in Bria and Yetzirah, and in Atzilus. In Atzilus, there exists definition and difference, but the definition and difference exists within itself, and therefore it doesn't manifest, and therefore there is no difference. Do you get that? It would be like, I can't describe it because we don't have an example for that, but it would be like Atzilus. The fact that we can talk about it means that it exists with separation and definition. However, Atzilus, because it is rooted in its source, it has not come to be. So it'd be like if I say, read that textbook. The textbook talks about 10 apples, and then I close the textbook. Are there 10 apples or not? No. There aren't 10 apples. It's writing in a textbook. Yes, but the fact that you could say there were 10 apples indicates that in some realm there is separation. But if you just look at the textbook, there is no apple and there is no number. It's just a piece of paper. So it doesn't exist, but it does exist. There is the separation, but the separation still exists within a single state of theory. Whereas higher than Atzilut, there is no 10 apples, because there is no 10, nor are there apples. What there is the potential for the concept called 10, and there's a potential for a concept called apples. Do you follow me? I'm sorry if I'm a little... I can't make this more... My koyach, my strength is not to be able to suddenly make spiritual concepts easy to understand. There are some people, they are brilliant at it. That's not my strength. So if you're not with me, that's my fault. It's not the information's fault. If you are with me, I don't know what you've been hearing. Textbooks, apples, 10. What the formation of wings and air. What's he talking about? Okay, so why is this important? Because Moses, has a soul that comes from Atzilut. Most people's souls do not come directly from Atzilut. Most people's soul come from far lower down, lower in the dimensions of consciousness of the soul. Atzilut is a very pure, because imagine if something comes from Atzilut, where we said it exists but it doesn't exist. It is still one with its source, but it is able to potentially exist, and you're a soul from there. Where does your soul, on what realm does your soul still operate? Because when a soul is inside your body, it's not separate from its source. So if you have a brain, and you have emotions, you have intelligence, and you have intellect, and all this is informed by your subconscious. And your subconscious is informed by your superconsciousness and your soul. And your soul is operating in a state of oneness with everything, not everything physical, everything to a point of where there is no such thing as definition. What are your thoughts like? How do you grasp reality? What do you see when you see another person? I can tell you what I see right now. I see a whole lot of people of different ages, with different hair colors, with different everything. I have no idea who any of you are. Well, I know who you are. I don't know who you are intimately. I can't tell you every single person's life story. I can't tell you what you're predisposed towards. I can't tell you what your hobbies are. I can't tell you any of that. Because I'm so detached from you. I don't sense any of this in you. I don't feel it. I have no information. I'm getting nothing. All I'm getting at best is that most people in this room have not fallen asleep yet. That's the only feedback I'm getting at this point. Moses, on the other hand, if he was sitting here, he'd say, Gila, it makes sense that you're wearing purple. Makes sense, because your neshama, he just would know. Not with judgment, just know. The same way I know my hand. I can tell you how many fingers I've got up. And I didn't think about it. Watch this trick. I did it eventually. How did I do that? Because I know where my hands are. I haven't got eyes in the back of my head, but where are they? There they are. I did it again. How did I do that? I know generally, and some people are excellent at that. Excellent. Because you know, it's you. On a deeper level, you know. Not on a spiritual level, on a conscious level, you know there's so much processing that isn't knowing as in thinking. It's knowing as in there's a consciousness. And that consciousness is because I know my own body. If you are from a dimension of reality in which nothing is separate, then you don't exist as separate people. You exist as an extension of the self. So if Moses was in this room, he would see you all as just fingers and hands of his own body as he sees his own body. He would intimately know you all. He would know what makes you scared. He would know what makes you laugh, not with any judgment. Whatever makes you sad would make him cry. Why? Because you are him. Because on a soul level, he completely connects. You're a physically different character. Okay, so you're physically different. But he doesn't operate in the realm of physicality. He observes the world through physicality, but he doesn't relate to physicality. Moses feels like a stranger in the world. Moses felt like an absolute stranger. I'll give you some examples. The people in the desert came to him and they said, Moshe, we want meat. We're sick of this manna. Who wants magical food that comes from heaven that can taste from anything and never runs out? I mean, we want meat. And Moses says, what do you want from me? I can't give you meat. Moses, why can't you give meat? You do every other cool party trick. And Moses can't give meat because he doesn't relate to the concept of meat to want to bring it. What do you mean you want meat? Don't eat meat. I don't relate to it. So what does he say? Go talk to the elders. He summons the elders, and the elders organize the meat packaging process. Because the elders, as spiritual as they are, relate far more to what it is to be a human in the physical dimension and the concepts of desire, and therefore they can initiate the miracle of meat, whereas he can't. He can't bring some energy if he has no idea what it is or why or how. He doesn't relate to it. Moses is unique. Most other people are not of that level. So let me give you another interesting thing. Oh boy, I thought I could cover this in 5 minutes because I wrote down, just go through Moses, go through Ezekiel, no worries, you get it out of the way. Then I haven't even got to where I want to go, but it's interesting, no? Finally, we're doing a Kabbalah class. Finally, a bit of Kabbalah. Ezekiel, Yecheskel. What's Ezekiel famous for? His chariot. Does everyone know about Ezekiel's chariot? I'm going to tell you anyways, even if you don't know, but I want to see those head nods. Ezekiel's chariot, Ezekiel's prophecy. Ezekiel saw a chariot with 4 wheels that had the faces of different animals. There was barak, there was lightning, and there was noise, and there was a wind, and then there was the stillness, and there were the angels with 6 wings and 8 wings, and he saw the energies, and he saw the kisei covered. He saw the seat on which What's the seat? The seat on which God sits. God doesn't sit on seats. There are no seats, but he sees, he has the most amazing epiphany, a prophecy. And everyone goes, oh, Ezekiel, it's one of the most famous things that are brought in Kabbalah. Ezekiel is one of the lowest prophets that existed. Why? Because Ezekiel doesn't see the truth. He sees everything around. An example, the metaphor that the Baal Shem Tov gives for Ezekiel's prophecy, which relates to Shavuot, because we read about Ezekiel's prophecy on Shavuot, the Baal Shem Tov says that there was once a king. It's a metaphor. There was once a king, and he invited representatives of every segment of society to come and have lunch with him. They had to be at the palace at the crack of dawn, but lunch wouldn't be served until 2 p.m. But here's the king, you got to arrive promptly, and you wait in case the king decides to have breakfast. So they come to the palace, and the architects are looking. It's just incredible. They come into the welcoming hall, and the ceiling is 5 stories high. Not a single rafter, no pillars holding it up. The most broad room, incredible. The engineers are taken by it. The architects can't get over the design. And they stop there and they're mesmerized. The rest of the group keep walking. The artists see the tapestries on the wall and they are taken by their beauty. They just can't progress. And they look at the art. It's amazing. As they keep walking, the glaziers, in the olden days when that was a craft par excellence, they're looking at the stained glass windows and they just can't get over the use of glass and the changes in color without any break in the glass. It's incredible. And then they get to the banquet hall, and slowly but surely people are tapering off. And at the banquet hall, there are hors d'oeuvres. And the chefs in the room, they've all watched 3 seasons of MasterChef, and suddenly they know how to talk like critics. I'm picking up a bit of time, and I love how you've mixed the soft and the hard. And they're taken by cheese on crackers. They can't get over it. And the peasants keep walking. They keep walking. 2 o'clock comes, the grand ballroom doors open, and 2 people walk in. And the king says, the 2 of you, come in, close the doors, you're having lunch with me. Why? Not because you're peasants, but because why did you come? You came to see me. You came to have lunch with me. Everyone else came, they're all, you know what? You get these people who are machas. Machas, people that like to be connected and everything. Generally, machas get more of a kick out of being connected to someone great than being someone great. And then you get the people who sit behind the throne. People who are very modest, quiet, and they whisper in someone's ear. You don't know that they're power brokers. You don't know how powerful they are. You never know. But they're there for that, and everyone else is there for themselves. And the king says, close the doors. You're the 2 people that came. Why? Not for the art, not for the food, not for the architecture, not for the engineering, not for the gardens. You came because the king summoned you and you're here. And that's the metaphor of Shavuot, by the way. That's the metaphor of Shavuot. That we're not here for the lightning and the transcendental experience. We're here because that's where we're meant to be. It's a very, very simple and beautiful form of truth, where you're there for the absolute truth. Yecheskel's prophecy, Ezekiel's prophecy, what's it about? It's about angels and chariots and seats and lightning and noise and rushes of wind and bears and eagles and lions and all sorts of things. You know what it's not about? God. It's so fascinating, but it actually doesn't tell us much about the big boy. It doesn't tell us much about the oneness of being in the moment of the Ein Sof, of the infinite. It tells us about all these things. And we get all excited because we relate to these things. So when we talk about Moses, and you read the sections of the Torah where Moses speaks, you never see things like, I walked up the mountain, and I couldn't help but smell spirituality, and I could taste spirituality, and I met this angel, and I shook his hand. There's none of this. All we know is Moses and God are constantly schmoozing. When we read the prophecies of the future prophets, we get all sorts of additional information. Additional information is useless information. It's interesting. There's significance. But if I want to know about the Ein Sof, if I want to know about Etzem, if I want to know about the essence of everything, it tells me nothing. So Moses is a unique character, being a neshama d'Atzilus, that he can exist in the here and now of the physical world and at the same time exist in a completely different dimension. So when we read about Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov in the Torah, when we read about them, do they know? So later on we learn all sorts of things. We learn that Avraham is chesed. Did Avram know he was chesed? Did he know that he embodies that sphira? We know that Joseph was punished for asking. When Joseph was imprisoned in Egypt, he was punished for asking the butler to remember him when he got freed from prison. And Hashem says, you know what? You asked him for a favor instead of just having belief in God. You're staying in prison for another few years. That's it. And everyone goes, whoa, is it so crazy to ask someone to do you a favor? And the answer is because Joseph was such a spiritual guy, he should have been able to maintain his belief. He should have stayed in a state of Yichud Ilah. But did Joseph know that? Was Joseph such a mystic? Because if he was, he wouldn't have asked the butler. The fact that he asked him means maybe Joseph wasn't so aware. And so the Torah exists in multiple dimensions at the same time. Whether every character in the Torah knew what they spiritually represent is not important to us, because the Torah is not a history book. The Torah is telling us a narrative that exists on 4 dimensions. That's what it's telling us. And so when it says that Avram is chesed, it's chesed. And when we say Avram is an old man, he's an old man. Is he both? Yes. Does he know? We don't care. We have to learn the story of Abraham, and we need to know the knowledge of chesed. That's it. Empires in the Torah also represent things. There's Amalek. Amalek are the land-based pirates. They are a group of nomads who never ever establish a kingdom. They roam the global countryside, marauding, pillaging, looting, raping, killing. That's what they do. That's what they do for a living. Generally, they attack nations from their weakest point, i.e. the disabled, the women and the children, and by then they can attack the army because the army is so emotionally impacted. Then they loot, they kill, and they leave. They don't care the consequences. Suicide mission? No worries, we'll give it a whirl. That is Amalek. But we know Amalek also is numerically Sophic. Amalek is numerically Sophic. Sophic means doubt. The 2 Hebrew words, Amalek and Sophic, are exactly the same. What is Sophic? What is doubt? Doubt is this thing that creeps up in you just as you're having this brilliant idea and it tears you down. Is doubt rooted or based on anything logical? No. No one ever has a doubt about something because they've got firm information. Doubt, by definition, means I don't know, but I'm not going to back myself in this moment. That's doubt. Doubt is a very dangerous thing. We're not talking about gut instinct based on previous experiences. We're talking about just being doubtful and cynical for the sake of being doubtful and cynical. You know those people who are just always cynical? They're always cynical. You say, I just went to a great lecture from, let's choose someone who's not alive anymore, Stephen Covey. Brilliant lecture. And they go, brilliant lecture. He's just a good presenter that makes a whole lot of money. How much did you pay? $500 a ticket? And you feel like an absolute loser for actually listening to someone who's got information. Or people say, the Pope. He doesn't really care. He's just doing things to curry favor because he realizes that the whole pedophilia thing is rocking the church. He doesn't really care. He's just doing this to curry. You're an idiot. Or the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama. It's just he knows he's got an act that all the Westerners fall for. You know these people. They're just anything you say. They're cynical. You say, America, China, China. Nothing's good. They're not capitalists. They're not communists. What are they? They're just people with opinions that are there to be negative on everyone else's expense. That's Amalek. Yeah, but did Amalek know that that's what they represent? Who knows? It doesn't matter. The fact that the Torah tells us that Amalek is Sophic, that Amalek is the energy of destruction without justification, even to its own detriment, that is Amalek. How do we know that? Look at the stories. That's what they did. What do they physically represent? A spiritual concept. They're just not in tune with what they are spiritually, so they don't realize that their behavior is informed by their spiritual source. So we can see 2 parallels when they can't. So different nations, Moab, Ammon, Amalek, Midian, they are embodiments of different spiritual systems. And every time we look at a war in the Torah, the war is either permitted or not permitted based on who they are and what they represent. Amalek, the instruction is attack them even if they haven't attacked you. Amalek there's an instruction to destroy Amalek, to destroy that nation. We don't know who that nation are. We don't destroy anyone. We don't assume we know. We're not allowed to kill anyone in the name. Oh, I think that person was Amalek. You know, people say the Nazis were Amalek. Not sure about that. Not sure if the Nazis were Amalek, because the Nazis had a justification for what they did. Really lousy justification, but they justified it. They said, the Jews are ruining our economy, and the Jews are vermin, and the Jews are ruining everything. Well, that sounds like a reason to me. Amalek attacked people because they're there to be attacked. It's more like Cossacks almost, just having fun at someone else's expense. I'm not clearing the Nazis, don't worry. In fact, if they're not Amalek, they can get greater punishment. So there's an empire called Midian. Finally, I get to Midian. This is all I want to get to. Midian. The Midianites. The Midianites would be southern Syria of today, that geographically. Under Midian was Moab. The Jews weren't really supposed to attack Moab, and they didn't. Moab wanted to attack the Jews when they were encamped on the border because they were scared. Balak, famous character in the Torah, Balak doesn't like that the Jews are camped on his border as they're about to enter into Israel. And the reason why he doesn't like it is because they've really knocked over a few countries on their way, and he doesn't want to be next in line. So he tries to curse them, and he tries to punish them, and he employs the wisdom of a well-known Midianite wizard. His name is Bilam. He says, Bilam, curse the Jews. And in the story that the Torah tells us, Bilam was unable. He tried and he tried and he tried. He just couldn't get his act together. And then he blesses the Jews. And then he reassures and he says that in a few thousand years, these people are going to take over everything. And the whole world will be in a state of their spiritual system and they will just be there. And what does Balak say? Few thousand years? I've got nothing to worry about. I'll be long dead. So he goes back home and he never attacks the Jewish people because he knows his empire is secure, his children's empire is secure, and his great-grandchildren's empire is secure, so he has no reason to fight with them. Bilam, on the other hand, the Midianite, is like, whoa, you can't just go home. We want to kill these people. Just because I couldn't curse them, let's go, let's attack. And Balak's like, easy, bro. I don't need to pick a fight if there's no fight to pick. Let them go. Midian is anti this concept of letting them go. And so Bilam suggests a cunning plan. And the suggestion is to bring pirud, to bring a divisive attitude to the Jewish people. He says, we can't destroy them through war. So what we'll do is we will divide them and let them kill themselves. And he suggests, and he actually goes down the path of a number of steps of actually sowing seeds of division and discord in the Jewish people. And it leads to a lot of horrible things. Midian spiritually represents discord and hatred. All this has just been about getting to that one statement. Midian represents discord and hatred. Does Midian exist today? Do you know any Midianites? Has anyone ever gone to their local travel agent and go, look, feeling a bit daredevilish, can you get me a return ticket to Midian? I would like to pick up myself a Midianite slave. It's just a little something for the way home. There are no Midianites today. There's no country called Midian. There's no Midian. But the concept of Midian still exists. Otherwise, the Torah wouldn't tell us about it. The Torah doesn't tell us about things that don't exist. Midian still exists. What is Midian? Midian is pirud. Midian is discord. When we talk about the soul of the individual, everyone here has a soul, and everyone's soul is informed by different things. Prior to Tikkun, the state of reality which exists today, or that we're trying to create today, you ever heard the phrase Tikkun Olam? Yeah, everyone's into Tikkun Olam. Tikkun Olam somehow has become acts of humanitarian whatever. It's not what tikkun olam means. Tikkun olam means to correct the world. To correct the world. It doesn't mean dishing out food to Africans, nor does it mean saving the whales. Those two things are micro elements of what tikkun olam is. They are single representations of tikkun olam. Tikkun olam is that there should be no divorce in the world. Tikkun olam is that there should be no rape in the world. Tikkun olam is that there should be no stealing in the world. Tikkun olam is that there should be no hunger in the world. Tikkun olam is that there should be no negative judgment in the world. Tikkun olam is harmonious existence. Tikkun olam is other-centeredness. Tikkun olam is meditating for 5 hours every day. Tikkun olam is working hard. Tikkun olam is supporting. Tikkun olam is happiness. Tikkun olam is heaps of stuff. It is bringing the correction to the universe, of which saving the whales is one thing. Helping African children is another thing. But you know what? Helping people in St Kilda is just as much tikkun olam. In fact, getting a job, earning an income so that you can provide for your family is also tikkun olam. It's amazing. I don't mean to discredit anything. I'm just broadening what this term means. Tikkun is order. The correction is about creating order in the world, that everything has its place, everything can have its identity without it being damaged by something else. Tohu is chaos. Chaos is where multiple things exist in the same space and keep displacing each other, and so therefore there is rough movement because of the need to negate the other. That is chaos. That's tohu. Tikkun is about creating, putting everything in its space. You know, I hate that. You know those IQ tests where you've got blocks and you've got to put them in a box, or you've got to do something and you've got to make it all good, and the person says, you see it, and then they empty it out, and now you have to do it, and you start building it, and it comes out looking like this. It's the furthest thing from a cube, and all it does is it sows seeds of discord and hatred. You know, and you feel like an idiot. Like you thought you had a high IQ, but little did you discover that you can't even play with toys anymore. So that point of where it's like this, and you say, I've used every piece and it doesn't fit in, that's tohu. Tikkun is where every piece can fit in perfectly and precisely. What are we doing in the world right now? We live in a realm of tohu, or we live in a realm that is impacted by tohu. That's why there is crime in the world. That is why there is both good and bad. There is nothing in this world that is good or bad. There's nothing. Everything in this world is good and bad. Just some things are very good and a little bit bad, and other things are very bad and a little bit good. I'll give you a good example. America. Okay, I'll give you another example. No. America. We know, it's funny because I find people know more about American politics than Aussie politics. There's an election in America going on right now, and there's an election going on in Australia right now. Which one's more interesting? The American. We don't have a Trump in Australia. There is nothing to watch. Some union guy versus some millionaire. Like, go work it out. I'm watching Trump and his little African American, you know. My African American. All I want to know is the Jew who's not really Jewish, he flaps his hand, or the woman who could be the first woman president is Hillary or Bernie. Much more interesting. You don't get comedy segments on Bill Shorten. You get comedy segments on Americans. So who would you vote for if you were an American? Would you vote for a Republican, or would you vote for a Democrat? No, the token American in the room. I feel bad, Audrey. I always pick on Americans, and I realize Audrey's actually an American. Okay. America is a Medina Shel Chesed. Always important to put that caveat. It's the state of kindness. So who's good? The Republicans? Republicans are what? They're into gun laws and all sorts of crazy things. Yeah, but they're also into the preservation of liberty. Democrats, they're wackos. They're socialists. They're borderline communists. No, they're not. They care for the people who just can't make it in a capitalist society. For whatever reason, they're underprivileged. So who's good, who's bad? Both are good and both are bad. Both are a set of policies that are bad in some ways and great in some ways. There is no such thing as a good and bad. It's just which one you tend to. If you're a left-winger, the right-winger bad. If you're a right-winger, the left-winger bad. It's completely subjective who is good and who is bad, because there is no good and there is no bad. We only have mixtures in this world. Everything is a mixture. So the mixture is right now in a state of where two things can't exist in the same time. Two things can't exist in the same place. Everything has to be an extreme. That's the world we live in. Look at diets. You show me the balanced diet, and which books about living a balanced life are the ones flying off the shelf? No! You got to be vegan. You got to be a carnivore. You've got to have the Atkins diet. You've got to have the caveman diet. You've got to have this. There is no such thing as balance in the world. If you're not into something extreme, there's something wrong with you. Everyone is into something. The world's just is a pendulum that swings in different directions because it is a mixture of good and bad. That is the tohu. That is the chaos. What we're trying to do is bring about tikkun, order. Everything has its place. There is a place for this and there is a place for that, and sometimes the place for that is that it doesn't exist except as a concept. And I'm not knocking it. That's a real thing. So we're all influenced by both. We all have tohu inside us and we all have tikkun inside us. Otherwise, you can't bring about tikkun if you don't have the potential for tikkun inside you. We all have Amalek inside us. Who here doesn't experience a moment of doubt, of where you tear something down, even if it's self-doubt, where you tear something down purely because it's there to be torn down? You show me the person that has never experienced cynicism in their life. Everyone has a moment of cynicism. The thing is, we mostly, hopefully, if we're relatively healthy, will dominate the cynicism and not allow it to manifest. But we've got it in us. So too we've got Midian. What is Midian? Midian was an empire that sowed seeds of discord by creating splits amongst the people through argument, through pirud, through argument, through differences of opinion. Midian is I don't want to say it's about Tevye, but you know in the beginning of Fiddler on the Roof, the prologue, it's called a prologue in the beginning, yeah? And the song tradition, and he walks up to the man and he says it was really 5 or 8, how old the horse was. And he says it was 12, it was 8, and he gets the fight going just for the sake of the camera. That's Midian, where I go up to Shari and I say, oh, by the way, Adam told me. And then I go to Adam and I say, Shari told me. And and everything I've said is truth. But I'm doing this for my own entertainment. I've got what to work with here. I don't like either of them. I should talk now about someone else. I don't like either of them. And that's why I do it. Midian didn't like the Jewish people. And therefore what they did was, because they couldn't destroy them themselves, they used pirud so that they'd destroy themselves from within. We all have that ability inside us. What is hatred? What is hatred? Hatred for a reason is not hatred. So let's say someone kills someone else's grandfather. The hatred is right now on the act. No one hates the murderer. That may be the case. They may hate the murderer, but far more involved in what happened. Upset that the grandfather is dead. Hate the act of murder, and therefore hate the perpetrator. The whole thing is linked. What about this? That's one form of hatred. It's a justified form of hatred. It's not necessarily correct. I'm saying it's justified. We can understand it. What about this? You're standing in a room. You're at a wedding. You're at a wedding. And there's someone who walks into the room. They're 45 years old, but you remember them in school before they left the school in grade 1. And in grade 1, she drew all over your artwork. You walk into the room now, you haven't seen them since. Someone says, hey, look, it's Marlowe. They know Marlowe's here, right? I've got to think creatively. It's Marlowe. So which Marlowe? Marlowe Smith from grade 1, you remember? Marlowe Smith. Whoa! I can't stand. And Marlowe is now 5'9". She's drop dead gorgeous. She's amazing. And she walks in and she throws you a smile because she's also a famous celebrity now. And you don't go, oh, Marlowe smiled at me. You're like, drop dead, whatever 4-letter word you want to finish that sentence with. Just drop dead. Your existence is taking away from my existence right now. If you've ever experienced a hate towards someone and there is no real reason except their existence, that is a hatred of what we're talking about, which is midyon. That is that they detract from you, and therefore you would rather them not exist. And therefore, what do you wish on them? Death. Not death, at least break their leg and be taken to hospital. But I don't want them in the room with me right now. All she did was she threw you a smile. She doesn't know who you are. She's a celebrity. She just knows. Walk into a room and smile. She's actually doing the right thing. What's she done wrong? So you'll say, oh, no, there's a childhood memory. Really? Because she scribbled in grade 1 that you hate to the point that you want her to drop dead? So do you know this feeling? It can actually be with complete strangers. You know, you're like a strong character walks into the room and you're suddenly like, I hate that person. And you whisper to your wingman, whoever you're with, like, oh, I hate that person. So, well, you know him? Nah, I just don't like the way they're behaving. Don't like that. I don't like the way they look. What do you mean you don't like the way they look? God created them to look like that. Nah. Bad person. I feel it. You feel it? What you feel is you feel threatened and you feel something, but it's all you, not them. That's hatred. That's pirud. You have now got complete animosity towards another person for no reason. Let's go back to our murderer. Our murderer, and remember, I'm not talking about forgiveness tonight. Our murderer kills someone's grandfather. And it's now 150 years on. And you read about it in the textbook. Have you ever hated a character in a textbook? Have you ever read The Count of Monte Cristo or one of these classics which really can make you feel hate? Harry Potter? It's all this. Yeah? There are certain characters you hate. What are you hating? We're talking about a person in a book. Or have you ever hated someone in a movie? Are you hating? It's not a real person. I hate. Hate. You concoct this sensation within yourself and you hate them. Your hating is you. It's not them. It's you. Hatred is you. If the moment of murder just took place, fine. I hate the murder. I hate what happened. I hate the situation. Ergo, I hate the person. What if it's what I call her, Chloe? Marlo. What if Marlo comes up to you, like our guy in the DP camp at the beginning, and says, Stacy, right? And you go, yeah, nice of you to remember, Marlo. And she says, do you know, for the last 40 years of my life, I have lived with such regret for drawing on your picture in grade 1. And you act all cool and casual, go, what? You remember that? Like, you don't remember it. Like, you remember that? She says, yeah, I really feel bad. And then what does Marlo do? Says, well, anyway, I'm really sorry, and walks off. You go, not so quick. I still hate you. But remember, Marlo's a celebrity. What if Marlo says, can I make it up to you? Look, I've become very wealthy. I'm a big actress in Hollywood. Why don't you come with me? I want to hear where you are, but I have to leave back to America tonight. Why don't you come on my plane? How will you feel? Oh, Marlo, I love you. I forgive you. Ah. What's the difference? The difference hasn't been in Marlo. Both times Marlo said, I'm sorry. Just in one, Marlo's like, well, see ya. And the other one, Marlo's like, why don't you come on my private plane? Oh, private plane, celebrity with Marlo from Hollywood. I'm now big with this person. She drew on my homework. We're besties now. What's the difference? The difference is you in both situations. Your ego is the difference in each situation. In the first one, your ego wasn't padded, so you still hate them. In the second one, your ego's been inflated. You're now with the celebrity. So, what is hatred? Hatred is me. Hatred is not the other. Hatred is me. Hatred is a result of ego. I can't tolerate you, therefore I hate. That's hatred. You can justify it, but justification doesn't make it right. As the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, says, surely the Torah says you have to hate the sinner. When did we all become so altruistic that we started hating sinners? Like, oh, aren't you a God-fearing Jew, just busy hating all the sinners? Look, I wish I didn't have to hate so many people. The people who are commanded to hate never bring themselves to hate. We hate the action. We hate the deed. It's like I always say about Nazis. If we say that they're the devil, It's how they were made. But if we say they're human beings, we can prosecute them. Because Nazis are people. People have bechira. People have free choice. And if they've got free choice, we can prosecute them. Then indeed what they've done is bad. And yes, their personalities may be completely taken over by their negative traits. But be'etzem, at a core essence, they're a human being. You can't say they are at their very essence bad, because if you do, then how could you hold them accountable for what they did? Nothing in this world is bad at its very essence. It couldn't exist if it was. Because at the essence of everything is the infinite, is a soul. The person or the thing does bad things. It takes over their personality. It takes over their predispositions. It takes over the things that they're disposed towards. It takes over. Fine, they do a lot of bad things. They are not. They are. You can say they're a bad person, as in describing their actions. But you can't say that I hate that person. You hate what they're doing. What I'm saying right now is very challenging. I don't lay claim to not hate people. It's very, very hard. But it's going to be interesting because hatred is not allowed, but forgiveness, not have to. Because when you hate, you are tapping into the midyon within. Midyon is the pirud. Hatred is I separate from you. I and you are like this. Now what does that do for the tikkun in this world? Oh no, I'm hating them for good reasons. Rubbish. What are you doing for tikkun? If you hate someone else, that means you don't allow them the space to exist. If they physically exist, they need a place to exist. There's nothing wrong with divorcing, separating, moving to the opposite ends of the world. Because, sometimes someone does draw on your homework and it does bother you, and for whatever reason it does emotionally scar you. And every time you see them, it conjures that up. So you need to see a psychologist to overcome the emotional response to seeing this person, and move to the other side of the world so that you don't have to be confronted by them. That's not the absolute tikkun, but at least you're not trying to kill them. So you've got to move away. Or let's say someone's in the middle of a crime. A crime that's ongoing. Someone that beats up other people. So we don't say, turn the other cheek, or I don't hate you, I have to give you space, I'm going to move to the other side of the world. As long as they're involved in causing tohu in the world, as long as they're involved in creating chaos in the world, as long as they're involved in harming the world and not allowing something else the space to exist, you have a proactive obligation to stop them. Call the police, trip them up, beat them up. Whatever the law says is what you do to this person, you must do. There's no moment of, I heard a lecture recently, I was shocked, I don't know if it's true, that after September 11, there were different responses in New York. And one of the responses from an Eastern tradition, I'm not going to label it just in case I'm wrong, but from one of the Eastern traditions which talk about forgiveness and letting go, they organized not a prayer group, but a meditation session for as many New Yorkers as would come to practice forgiveness. Towards the terrorists. You don't forgive terrorists. Terrorists who are involved in terror, you don't forgive them. You have to bring them to justice because otherwise they're going to do more. At the time of someone causing tohu in this world, at the time of them causing damage in this world, they have to be stopped. That's all there is. We don't focus on our feelings or not feelings. We have to respond. Later we can deal with our feelings. So when we talk about hatred, it's always after the fact. It's not at the moment, because at the moment it's not hatred, it's dealing with it. Unless you're dealing with it. This morning I heard on the news that some mafia guy in Melbourne is in hospital. Either he's in hospital or someone's in hospital because there was a house invasion. And Gelberly, the lawyer who's on 3AW always, he was saying that there are tricky laws because we have to allow people the space to be able to defend their homes when there's a break-in. But what you can't have is retribution. Once the crime has been committed, you can't then go hunt the person down and take the law into your hand. But when someone breaks into your house, you can have whatever feelings you want, respond and deal with it. Ultimately, that's all that counts. And generally, you won't feel hate at the moment of survival. And if you do, you have to suspend the hate for a moment and just come to logic. What is the appropriate response here? Kill them, stop them, suspend them, arrest them, whatever it is. While someone's involved in a crime, we don't really call that hate. We call that response. Call that humanity. Hate is what happens after. Now that it's been dealt with, I hate. I hate that person. So I'm not saying you're not justified in hate. What I'm saying is that we're not supposed to hate people, because when we come back to the core of this world, every single person has a place. And that person who has committed something wrong or done something wrong has a place to exist in this world. It doesn't mean that you need to herald them. Their place might be in jail. Their place might be on the gallows. That might be the place. In Judaism, there's the concept of capital punishment. So if someone commits a crime, let's say someone murders someone, and there were witnesses, etc., that person's going to be put to death. Where's the forgiveness? Save that for next week. It's not about forgiveness. This person has done something in the world that has changed the whole energy of the universe, that the next step is that this person now loses their life. It's not hatred, it's not pirud, it's not midyan, it's justice, it's gvura. It's very hard. It's very judgmental, but it's gvura. So someone may belong in prison. We don't say, remorse. Judaism's not very big on remorse. It's into consequences. Remorse is what you do. It has nothing to do with the justice system or safety of society. I'm not discounting remorse, but I'm just saying remorse is a very delicate subject. Midyan is something that cannot exist. We can't allow hatred. There is never a time to allow hatred. However, the avodah, the hard work, is to try to release ourselves of hatred, because hatred is not in them, it's actually in us. Hatred doesn't take place in someone else. Hatred takes place in us. When we hate someone else, it's us. It's our ego. When we try someone, when we prosecute someone, that's not us. That's the system. But the emotional response is us. And hatred being the result of midyan has no place. So, yeah. All right. It's been a long night. I apologize that we went overtime. So next week, Monday night, not, but Saturday night, yes, or Sunday, Shavuot, if you want to hear Seret HaDibrot, we're doing it here at 11. And then I'll see you the Monday after, where we're going to build on what we did tonight to now reverse it to discuss, Forgiveness. Forgiveness. Thank you.